Hello, everyone. Welcome to Do You Know Your Inner Flower? It's based on a verse, an interesting verse in the book of Song of Songs. It's called Shir HaShirim in Hebrew. One of the most romantic poems ever written, and also one of the most ancient ones, attributed to King Solomon. So we're talking about almost 3,000-year-old love song. Many songs have been written since, but some say nothing has ever been written that is as romantic and erotic and sensual like Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, to the extent that till this day commentaries and scholars and lovers and singers and what do we call them, romantics are looking to understand and interpret many of these verses, because they're written, as all poetry is, quite cryptically. So there's a verse that elaborates, that is connected with this month, actually, the Hebrew month of Elul. The month of Elul is the month, as you may know, is the last month of the Hebrew year, the last lunar month of the Hebrew year, always preceding Rosh Hashanah. So now in the end of the first week of the month, if you've been following along the 60 days, the book I've written, or the 60-day emails, so you're quite aware that each day has its own particular power. But the month of Elul, particularly the word Elul, which is the Hebrew name of the month, is an acronym that consists of 4 letters. The Hebrew words are Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed, and it's an acronym for a verse in the book of Song of Songs, chapter 6. If you want to refer to it, verse 3. So Ani l'daidi v'daidi li, Elul is Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed. So in Hebrew, Aleph is Ani, I. L'daidi is to my beloved. V'daidi, and my beloved li, to me. That is the acronym for this month. And this is elaborated upon in many different texts and books, especially by the mystics, the connection of the month to this verse. Because an acronym is not just a so-called superimposed or a forced application of the word. It actually has certain real connections. Oh, thank you. Good. I just was asked for an English translation, so though many of them are pretty inadequate, but hopefully this can help a bit. Yeah. So anyway, what is the connection to I and to my beloved, and my beloved is to me? So I began discussing this theme last week, in previous weeks. This is connected to the whole journey, both collectively of the human race, collectively of the Jewish people, and as well as individually of each of us. One of the beautiful things in Torah thought, which is like a methodology of how to think in general about life, is that everything is divided into what's called microcosm, macrocosm. Meaning that anything you see in the larger world also exists in the smaller world. Which means we individually reflect, and in some ways are a mirror image of entire existence. Now this may have been some type of nice metaphor or unsubstantiated primitive theory, if we did not know that today in modern physics, this happens to be a fundamental principle in all of physics and all of science. Basically, that everything is everything. For example, atoms. Everything is made up of atoms. All atomic structures are the same. There are different combinations, but the basic elements, or let's say a neutron, electron, and a proton, and now we know many other particles and subatomic particles are common, whether it's millions of miles away in the out of the solar system, down to the cellular structure within us. A stone, a plant, an animal, the sun, the moon, are all made up of atoms. So a fascinating thing has been discovered, that once upon a time you would think all these different entities and all these creatures were all separate. In fact, they're made up of exactly the same building blocks, which just substantiates an idea that has been established thousands of years ago in the Torah, which is specifically stated, Olam Katan Zeh Ha'adam, which means the human being is a small universe, and the universe is a large organism. This is today common knowledge. To the extent there's even theories that not only are they made up of the same building blocks, they actually are the same building block, and that when an atom, something happens to a subatomic particle somewhere billions of miles away, faster than the speed of light, instantaneously the rest of the universe is aware of it. This is where you hear about string theory or other theories that are posited in understanding a certain unified field, a certain unity, an intrinsic unity that exists throughout the entire universe. Now, we may not be sensitive enough to sense it, but the universe senses everything. You know, you've heard of ideas like ripple effect, butterfly effect. These are all different expressions of how one thing impacts something far, far away, to the extent that sometimes we don't even understand how they know. How one part of the universe, one part of the cosmic system is aware of another part of the cosmic system. So the idea of microcosm, macrocosm, as it reflects to us, is like you ever stand in front of a beautiful sunset, or in front of an ocean, or you're in awe of some beautiful sight in nature. Why does it touch us so deeply? I mean, it's nice to see the colors, nice to see different configurations, to see the awesome power of the waves, or of a waterfall, or the eloquence and the symmetry and harmony. But why does it touch us so much? Why do we relate to it? Because it's really reflecting something inside of you. We respond to harmony because harmony is something that is something we aspire to. When our lives are chaotic, it disturbs us. When our lives are harmonious and smooth, we're relaxed. When we're in water, for example, we feel like we belong. That's not just an accident. Remember, for 9 months, each of us spent in our mother's womb 9 months in embryonic fluids. So water is our most calming reaction. Water has the sound of water is relaxing. Today they simulate these sounds to help people put to sleep, whatever it have, all these things. But natural water is natural to us, and not just by accident, it's because we relate to it. The evolutionists will say maybe we originated from apes, and apes earlier from amphibians. The Torah puts it this way: we all began submerged in embryonic fluids, and also the universe began submerged in water. So nature is really us, and we are nature. So the larger world is reflected in the smaller world. If you think about it that way, you can find fascinating lessons and parallels in things that seemingly are disconnected to you, but even studying different natural systems, the seasons, for example, or studying different species, are all messages and lessons that we can find within ourselves. And indeed, basically, a lot of technology is simply copying nature. A camera is the copy of the human eye, and a plane is the copy of a bird. And so many other elements, whether it's in architecture. Did you know, for example, the most efficient use of space in architecture is a hexagon? Because there's no empty space, hexagons. So you look in certain building structures, if you want to create the maximum use of a minimum amount of space, they create hexagons. This they learn from bumblebees, from bees, how they make the catacombs, of how they weave their nests. So in birds, animals, how they build their homes, these are all lessons. Real architects, the real masters artists study beavers, they study different fish, they study how they build, because they're the most natural builders, and they're the most efficient ones. But this isn't just to be efficient, it also has many lessons in our lives. The Talmud actually says that if we weren't given the Torah, there are many lessons. You can learn modesty from a cat. For example, cats will always be modest. They will never mate in public. Dogs are the exact opposite, in case you're wondering. Cats, you'll always find, they always go privately when they want to mate or do any of their private things. So there's a lesson in that. And each animal has its own particular message and lessons. I remember a few years ago, remember the big film, they hit The March of the Penguins. Have you ever seen it? So penguins are, they live in the Antarctica. Many of us have never seen a real penguin except in the zoo. Something about that film touched everybody, because you saw the nurturing, the care of a father, how many hundreds of miles parents will walk for their children. The ups and downs. Penguins in the freezing cold, 100 degrees below zero, will huddle together, and how they change positions. That first the people on the penguins on the outer levels go back in the inside. I mean, it's fascinating. If you ever see how geese fly, for example, formations, armies, And even aerodynamics is studied in how birds fly together, how they support each other, and so on. I mean, I can go on and on and on. It's endless lessons. But it's my point I'm trying to make is that everything in the larger universe is within us. And that's why we have a symbiotic relationship. And we learn much from it. And obviously, the universe is dependent on us as well, both for good. And unfortunately, human beings can also destroy the environment. But in Judaism, the universe is sacred. We're not allowed to touch anything for no purpose. There's a famous story where one of the Rebbes, one of the great rabbis, was taking a walk with his little son in the woods, in a field, and the little boy, just as anyone may do, nonchalantly ripped off a leaf from a tree and began rubbing it. And his father said to him, "What right do you have to rip off a leaf of a tree? To disrupt its cycle, its life, its environment, for no reason, just for you to rub it." Which was a tremendous lesson, the sensitivity we must have, not just to other human beings, to other life forms, even to a leaf, one leaf. How sensitive is that? It goes even further. It says, when a wicked person walks on the street, the cobblestones cry out, "What right do you have to walk on me? I, the stone, never transgressed. I never hurt anyone. Why are you using your wicked feet that you once used to hurt someone to walk upon me?" So I know this is more metaphorical, but it's the same idea, because everything is full of energy, and an ultimate sensitivity is that everything in this existence is sacred. So of course it begs the question, so then why do we have the right to consume other creatures for our own sustenance? It's another discussion, not for now. I'm leading it up to because I want to discuss the idea of going back to the month of Elul. This verse, "I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me," is the essence of this month. As I said, connected to flowers, as we shall soon discuss. So in the context of the collective context of life, as I said, and the individual context is very, very similar. If you look at history in general, you can find history also play itself out in us individually. Just like we mature from childhood. Is the air on?
Yes.
Yeah. For some reason, extremely hot in here, no? Am I hot? No? Beautiful day already, so So Anila Daidi V'Daidi means I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. As I discussed in the previous weeks, in context of this month as well, this is the essence of love. Love is a reciprocal thing, number one, not a one-way street. Number two, thing about love, just in these 4 words, tells us that love means initiating. You don't wait. It's not about taking, it's about giving. So it begins with I initiate. I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. And the context of why this verse is connected to this month is connected to the history of the Jewish people, which, as I said, will also be reflective of our own personal lives. Here you'll see how a macrocosm and a microcosm play itself out. It's on? I don't know, for some reason it's extremely hot here, no? Okay. So, as we all know, the story of life is such that it's not simple. It would all be nice if we were able to retain our so-called innocence. We're born innocent children. No one is born guilty, just for the record. So we're born innocent, pure children. And then life begins to affect us. First our parents, then our educators, then society, and then life itself, all the disappointments, all the challenges, the trials and tribulations, losses, disappointments, duplicities. The list goes on. I'm not going to go through all the nightmares and horror stories. You can fill in the blanks yourself. And the question is, where do we stand after we've gone through it? It's one thing before you've lost your innocence, before you've gone through any challenges. Okay, so you can be more naive and unjaded. But then once you experience those elements in life, what do you do with it? Which really, in essence, is a simplistic question, but it's the biggest question, which is why therapy is a $1 trillion industry, and self-help books and every type of efforts that, whether it's workshops or retreats, whatever it is that people seek out to try to find some answer to their problems, whether it's how to find or maintain healthy relationships, how to deal with fear and insecurity, how to deal with our own inner demons and psychological wounds and scars. These are things that we work on. Some are more successful than others. No one really knows the success rate because, first of all, people don't report it, and it could also be depressing if it's accumulate all the statistics. But we see some people's lives are extremely difficult. No matter what they do, they really can't get out of their rut. And others seem easier to be able to do so. And then we wonder what makes one person different than the other. Two people can experience the same type of tragedy or same type of loss, and one is able to be more resilient than the other. Are we wired differently? Is it luck? What's going on? Do we have any control over this? So these are big questions because it affects all of us. None of us are immune to the challenges of life. This can take on physical challenges, spiritual challenges, psychological ones, health, physical health, mental health, etc., etc. Everybody knows their own particular so-called story. So I'm going to be addressing all of this. But the context here to the month is I want to go back to the macrocosm. What was the story of the Jewish people? It's exactly this story. They ended up, the Jewish story begins usually with the Exodus from Egypt. It's the Passover story, which we commemorate during the Seder. That after many years of oppression and challenges, the people are freed and discover transcendence. That's called Yetzias Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim in Hebrew means constraints, limits. They experience freedom. So think of it as a transcendent, inspirational epiphany type of moment, a watershed moment. A nation is freed. It'd be the first documented story of emancipation of a nation. And then a little while later, 7 weeks later, 50 days later, they receive the mandate, which is known the story of Sinai. They receive the Torah, the mandate, a blueprint for life. What happens then? Everything seems to be going well. The high point, having a divine connection, having spiritual awakening, a higher state of consciousness. But then, as usually what happens is when people have blessings, they often take them for granted. And they, either arrogance or self-cockiness, whatever it may be, the people sin gravely. They build the golden calf. They build a golden calf, which is a direct betrayal of God. Do not have other gods. They build a false god. Moses comes down from the mountain. He sees this. He shatters the tablets. Now, this is a story many of you may be familiar with. You'll soon see how it's relevant to our lives. Okay, Moses shatters the tablets. Now, what happens then? He goes back up on the mountain to pray for forgiveness. And he's not successful initially. It takes him a long time. It takes him 80 days. And he finally comes down. He goes up final time this month of Elul. Soon get back to that. And comes down on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is 40 days from the first of Elul. A 40-day period. And Yom Kippur, he's finally achieved reconciliation. After a betrayal, after a break, he finds a way to reconcile with God and between God and the people. So the love was broken, and then the love was rediscovered. And of course, at this point, in a deeper way than initially. That's how it always is. When you have to fix something after it's broken, you have to find far deeper, you have to dig deeper and find a deeper connection. Because if it's just the connection that was before, that connection was severed already. So to find a love that comes after betrayal, after abandonment, after one infidelity, or after one form or other of one party hurting the other, you need to dig deeper in order for this connection you need to find deeper trust, deeper resources. So that's what Yom Kippur is, the holiest day of the year, the deepest day of the year, because the deepest love was discovered. So you have here the story of every person's life. We all go through a state where we begin with having some type of positive experience. We begin, as I said, innocent, pure. Then we undergo some form of betrayal. Either we betray or we're betrayed. Some type of break. And the big question is then, can you discover love after there was a break? After there was a loss? Anyone who's ever been in love and been disappointed in that experience knows the challenge. Many of us close down. We don't want to be hurt again. It's not so easy. Once your trust has been betrayed, once in some way promises have been broken, dreams have been shattered, we're not just willing to just entertain and enter again because it's too painful. So we have all kinds of defenses. Some of us feel it can never be regained. So that's why this question, this issue, is not a small one. It affects everything in life. Is there hope? It's really the biggest question. Is there hope? If life in some way has hurt us, is there hope after loss? Is there hope after pain? And whatever pain that is, whether it's a parents to children, environment, individual, collective, as I said. So here you have the collective story of the Jewish people as documented in the Torah is our personal story. We all go through the same questions and the same issues. That's why this period in the calendar, this period in time, is not just a small matter. It happens to be a question that can be completely personalized to each of us. In other words, you could write the story is in general terms, but you are a character in this story. And how it unfolds can teach you tremendous volumes of how you can gain hope and gain strength. Because frankly, what greater blessing is there? What greater gift can a person receive than empowerment? And I mentioned, I believe, last week or the previous weeks, if you had to make a choice, you were given an option that you should never suffer any challenges. You should never face any challenges in life. Never suffer any pain or loss. That's one option. Or the second option is that you will face some challenges, many challenges, but you'll be given. You ask for to be given for every challenge. You want to be given an equal amount of strength to deal with the challenge. Which one would you prefer? So initially, especially the childish part of us would choose the first one. Just give me a life with no problems, with no challenges. But think about that. First of all, is it even realistic? Even if it is that really what we want? With no challenges also means there's no motivation. That could be a very mediocre life too. What you really want to know is, I have no problem with a challenge, but just tell me that I have the power to overcome any challenge. That the challenges will not overcome me. If we were given that power, that's the truth. That's what you want. You don't want someone else solving your problems. You don't want to avoid problems. Obviously, you don't want to have more than necessary. But you want to know is that whatever comes your way, you'll be able to handle it. What's the greatest type of teacher? A teacher who teaches a student never to have questions? Never have confrontations? Or a teacher that teaches a student the methodologies, that matter what question comes your way, you have the tools, you have the resources, you have an arsenal at your disposal, tool chest, to deal with any issue. That's what you want to have. That's empowerment, because then it means that nothing can overcome you. So this is what Elul is all about, the month of Elul. And that's why I am to my beloved and my beloved to me. It's the story of love. It's a story of not just love, how to regain love, how to access love after it's been somewhat lost or broken or we've been disappointed. I mean, who even knows how much fear and drives us in protecting ourselves in the search of love. Now we all know, we all want love in our lives. One way or other, everybody wants love. Everybody needs love. And we also know we need to give love. But why is it so complicated? Because we're dealing, number one, with love. You can love yourself all day, but true love is with another. As soon as you're dealing with another, you're dealing with another person's interests. And two people driven by self-interest, usually there's conflicts. So that's a simple reason why it's a problem. Maybe I'm stating the obvious, but sometimes the obvious has to be stated. So there's you and there's someone else. Ani v'daidi. There's you and your beloved. Now, hopefully you have some common ground, so you give and take. But what happens when there isn't common ground? Or what happens when there's a conflict of interest? So that's the first issue. Secondly, that would be not so difficult because, in business we also deal with that. In business you have conflicts of interest. That's why you write contracts. And there's what you give, what I give. These are the conditions. If it doesn't work out, we say goodbye to each other. The difference is, however, a business contract is not an emotional experience. I mean, it could get emotional, but it could technically not be. It's a business transaction. I give so much money for these results. I get the results. Great. If I don't, Obviously, there's plenty of disagreements. There wouldn't be lawyers would be out of business, and litigation would be out of business if there wasn't any arguments about that as well. It does get personal, but still, it's not quite the same, because there it can come down. Listen, this is an agreement. It doesn't necessarily affect your whole life. It doesn't have to affect your whole life. When it comes to personal relationships, however, your whole life is invested. You're giving yourself. You're giving of yourself. So it becomes you're much more vulnerable, much more subjective, and people will not so easily say, you know what, my interest is this, your interest is this. Many people in love will do very deceptive things. Nobody wants to say, hey, listen, I have self-interest, and I'm not, and unless you satisfy my needs, I'm not going to love you. It's a very unromantic thing to say. If you want to get what you want, you usually don't say that. But that doesn't mean you're not thinking that. So in other words, there's selfishness going on in every relationship. The question is how much are you covering its tracks? How many smoke screens are there? Being that I've counseled quite a number of people in my life, and I've dealt with these issues, the smoke screens are so many, it's impossible even to measure. I've seen various scenarios where I've seen, just taking one that I remember just recently, where the guy was clearly to me a major narcissist, but he was very smart, so he knew how to cover his tracks. So basically, he had a whole case to express how selfless he is, and this and this and this. And he didn't even want to point his finger. He says, I blame myself for everything. But this is where real narcissists know how to do that perfectly. They blame themselves, but they're really subtly blaming the other party. And usually most people don't catch on unless you know how to read these type of symptoms. And he was brilliant, and he was making the woman miserable because she was feeling completely guilty, and so on. When in truth, he was completely the one. I mean, there's never one, it always takes two to tango. And there's always two people involved. But in this case, he was a big culprit involved. So, you have to know how to wisely expose him, because if you expose a guy like that too quickly, he doesn't come back again. So then there's no benefit there. He's not going to come, say, Rabbi Jacobson, he's not good for us. That's the first thing you do. So I had to do it in a wise way, and also in a way, because I saw that he was really he played tough, but he was really a very scared little child that just had manufactured a whole series of very complex systems to just justify his positions. So it's not that simple. And it's not just, okay, I've got a self-interest this. Like I asked him, my question, I played dumb as well. I said to him, so you tell me you have no self-interest? You're so selfless? I've never seen a person like that in my life. He was so selfless, that was the giveaway. He said, you have no self-interest? You're ready to do anything for her? He realized what I meant, so he said, not everything. He started giving me a list of things, very quickly manufactured. But the point is, that's the complications. People don't want to be exposed. And then the whole relationship becomes one big complex manipulation. And I know this is not an exception. I see from your smiles that you agree with that. It's complicated because people don't want to be exposed. In business actually, sometimes it's simpler. Here's the contract. This is what I need. If I don't get my profit, I'm out of this. In personal relationships, people do not like to say that. As I said, it doesn't sound good, it doesn't make you look good, and so on. So that's where it gets really convoluted. Not only is self-interest a factor, the problem is we're also hiding that fact, or at least minimizing it and distorting it, and so on. And it's far easier to blame the other person. And we're not even necessarily even doing it consciously, which makes it even compounds the issue. So the anila doidi v'doidi li issue, I am to my beloved and my beloved is to me, to find a healthy, reciprocal love, not a simple matter. That's why we have this entire month in the Jewish calendar. This is the way one prepares for the high holidays. Now you may have never heard it put this way. Most people, the high holidays is some type of obligatory thing. Once a year you make a deal with God, or I go for my parents, or it's guilt or responsibility. This is what Jews do, etc. How many people even some people are expecting on high holidays, maybe this high holiday I'll have some inspiration, some awakening. It's one of the most disappointing holidays for most people, because we're told that it's meant to be filled with deeper meaning, high holidays, and so on. And then you go through it. How many people do you know come out transformed, have really dealt with their psychological challenges, have less fear? Real impact. Yom Kippur is the holiest day in the year. So seemingly after Yom Kippur, you should feel like a fresh, newborn child. As they say, halavai, we wish it was that way. But it should be that way. So hopefully, not suggesting, I can't make a promise that it's going to be that way, but I think if we understand the holidays differently, and if we expect different things from it, and we do something about it, maybe it could have some transformative effect. Because like anything in life, nothing happens, there's no magic tricks. There's no magic pills. You're not going to go Yom Kippur, take a pill, Yom Kippur pill, and that's that, and you're solved. Atoned, the Day of Atonement. It's all about a process, and it's all about us learning how to do something about it. You want change, you have to affect change. Reaction. What they say, insanity is someone who does the same thing, wants different results. In healing world, they say, if nothing changes, nothing changes. You want change, you have to do something. You can't go enter the same way and expect to come out a different way. What's going to make that different? It's almost an immature expectation. It's like saying I'm going to do everything the same, and something's going to happen. Now listen, God can be merciful and compassionate and always create a miracle and give you something that you didn't even earn. But I don't know if that's something you should be expecting or preparing for. What we want to do is enter into this period and understanding what its meaning is. So first of all, the most important thing to know, this is the stories about you. You could say this story is about me, not about somebody else. It's not a story that happened thousands of years ago. It's a story about you. You have to personalize this in the deepest possible way. You have to look at this period in time as your journey. That's the first thing. Without that, you're not going very far. Because then it just becomes a theoretical, academic thing that you hear about abstractly. It's my journey. And then you have to look closely, what does the journey entail? And what can I look at inside myself to be able to look at with fresh eyes at my life, at the way I love, the way I'm loved, who I love, who loves me. And I mean this in the broad sense of the word, not just in the personal romantic sense. It could also be friendship relationships, platonic relationships, parents, children, friends, etc. Obviously also the deepest relationship of all, which is spousal relationship, male-female relationship, and so on. And that is ultimately the best way to prepare for the high holidays. You could say, well, isn't the high holidays about God? So first of all, God is also a relationship. It may not be like with a physical being, but you know something? The whole Shir HaShirim, the whole Song of Songs, some commentary, some mystics explain, Maimonides actually says, is really a metaphor between us and God. Because in a way, I think in Les Miserables, the play, they use a line there, to love another person is to see the face of God. This is a classic line. So God doesn't always mean some type of esoteric or mystical thing. Maybe loving another person means loving God. Because after all, in the Bible's version of love is that male and female were created as one, separated, and then they seek each other. They seek to reconnect to the image of God, which they both were part of. So essentially, it's a transcendent experience. Love is experience of transcendence. It's a way of uniting with God, which of course challenges what God means, which of course is the biggest question of all. You know, the classic story, I often repeat, I have it in my book, Toward a Meaningful Life, where the self-proclaimed atheist, Rabbi Levitzig Berditchever, 18th century Hasidic master, said to his self-proclaimed atheist, come to synagogue, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. He says, you know, Rabbi, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in this whole thing. You want me to come just pay lip service? You know, I like you, but what's the point? So Levitzig Berditchever, without getting upset and very calmly, says to him, you know, the God you don't believe in, I also don't believe in. Think about that. So sometimes our perceptions of God is what we need to review in this period of time, because for many of us, the knee-jerk reaction, the juvenile, so-called nursery school image of God that most of us have is some guy sitting on a throne in heaven with a long, flowing white beard, strikes us with lightning when we misbehave. Now you may not acknowledge that's the God you have inside of you, but I challenge you to tell me what is the definition of God. And it's not so easy. Who taught us what God means? We usually picked it up from either nursery school, our parents, and it's often very juvenile images, and very, what they call anthropomorphic images, very human images. God gets angry and so on. Now you don't need to be a master of Kabbalistic thought or mystical thought to know that if God is to mean anything, it cannot be just another human creation, another human imagination. If anything, God created us, we didn't create God. So God created the human in the divine image, and most of us created God in the human image. That's really what it comes down to. So that too is something that can be discussed. But one thing for sure It's about a relationship with you and your inner self, your inner soul. And that too is loving. So when we talk really relationships, it's not just how you love others and how others love you. I am to my beloved and my beloved is to me, is maybe how you love yourself. Now you'll say, 1 second, everybody loves themselves. Yeah, but there's a healthy way to love yourself and there's an unhealthy way to love yourself. A narcissist, I would call, is an unhealthy way to love. A narcissist is an insecure person. We all know the myth of Narcissus was what? Narcissus looking all his life for someone to love, and then he finally goes to a pool and sees of water and sees a reflection of himself. He falls in love with himself, and of course it's an unrealized love because he can never really find himself. So that is not what we would call healthy love. So when we say there's self-love, people have self-interest. There's healthy self-interest. There's unhealthy. Self-love in the healthy sense is self-esteem. For example, in Hebrew there's a word, anav and shafal, 2 words in Hebrew. Anav means a humble person. Shafal means a person of low self-esteem, low self-confidence. Humility and low self-esteem are not the same thing at all. Humility comes from strength, and low self-esteem comes from weakness. Another way to distinguish one is one empowers you, and one demoralizes you. So if it's a self-love that motivates you and gives you confidence and strength, that's a healthy self-love. That self-love actually is not a bad thing at all. Everyone should have a measure of that. That self-love will also allow you to love other people, because it's not exaggerated. It's not about me. It's about a sense that God blessed me with. Moses is considered the humblest man that ever walked on earth. So what does that mean? He's the humblest. But he wasn't aware of his strengths? No, because humble, anav, means fully aware of, cognizant of his strengths, but he said, these are not my own. I was blessed by God with these strengths. And had someone else been blessed, they would have done better than I. As a result, he walked with humility. So self-love is not a contradiction to humility. The other, narcissism, a self-love that comes from insecurity, from, let's say, being deprived of love, and you have to grab love from others because you don't know where it's going to come next. That comes from low self-esteem. That self-love will never bring healthy love with others because you don't even know how to love yourself properly. Your love is really a distortion. It's almost a cover, another smoke screen of really self-awareness. And they're very, very different. They can look similar. 2 people sitting quiet in a room, you think, is this a humble person or is it a weak person? But it should never be confused. If you really know how to read a person, you can tell the difference. Silence is not the sign. We live in a world where aggression seemingly is like a sign of strength. Aggressive people get their way. And humility is not respected. But that should not be confused with weakness. The strongest people are people who can be very quiet, and they don't become less for it. You don't need to be wrong for them to be right. It's another good way of seeing. Some people always need someone else to be wrong. It's a pretty quick sign. Why does someone else have to be wrong for you to be right? If you're so secure, be secure with the position. Maybe there's another perspective. A person like that can't handle that because they're not really secure with their position. So the only way is if everyone else is wrong, then I'm right. That is a sign of the low self-esteem sort. So to take this all together now, what do we have? We have a month called Anila Daidi V'Daidi. I am to my beloved is to me. A way to look at love, first of all, loving yourself the proper way. Number 2, loving others the proper way. And then loving God in the proper way. Trust me, if you can review that the next few weeks properly, you'll go into Rosh Hashanah Kippur very differently. And guaranteed you'll come out a lot different than how you entered. So it's all how much work you do. It's like anything in life. You invest more, the return is greater. There's really no other way. But we need to have tools, which is what the point of this class is to try to analyze and discuss this. So now I want to go back to the verse, back to the flowers that I began with. So, in the context, so we say Anila Daidi V'Daidi, that's the acronym for Elul, and as we shall discuss soon, that this 2-step process, I am to my beloved and my beloved is to me, can be applied even to yourself. How do you love yourself? I don't know if you're familiar with some healing work, those that work a lot with the inner child. That the idea that every one of us has an inner child that has been wounded, And how do you reconnect to that inner child? And if your inner child doesn't feel safe, it will never be able to really love. Because the inner child will make you miserable and not allow your outer adult to have a relationship with other adults, so to speak. So there's a whole process of how one nurtures themselves, takes care of themselves, and this particularly obviously acute for people who have been really hurt as children, and their child was never nurtured properly by parents. Unfortunately, dysfunctionality, abuse. I'm not going to go through again all the different unfortunate, tragic scenarios, abandonment, absenteeism. But if a child was not nurtured properly, this child will feel wounded and feel not trusting and be afraid. And it may encase itself in an armor of very sophisticated adult tools, but it's an inner child waiting to be loved. So there's work with this inner child, which some of it is how to nurture yourself, which is about how to love yourself properly, in a healthy way. Not in an unhealthy way, because many times when we're deprived of something, we also compensate by finding unhealthy ways to love. So the key is how to nurture yourself in a healthy way, which allows you then to be able to really allow someone else to nurture you, and allow yourself to nurture in a safer type of environment. As you'll see, these ideas, even though they seem to be very contemporary, Jewish thought go back literally thousands of years. So here's the verse, the context of the verse of Ani L'Deili, which is less discussed. So I'm just reading from the beginning of chapter 6 in Song of Songs. Of course it's in Hebrew. And it begins with a question. It's seemingly a cryptic question that is like almost asked by an invisible questioner. And says, where did your beloved go? Let me just see how they translate it here. Where has your beloved gone? O forsaken fairest among women. So it seems to be that the question is being posed to a woman, but frankly it could be posed to a man as well. Where is your beloved gone? And then it goes on, let us seek him and let us find where he is. That's verse number 1. And the question is asked, and then someone answers the question. Clearly, the one that's being asked the question is the one that, where is your beloved gone? So she answers, my beloved has gone to a garden of spices. That's what it says. To a bed of roses. To gather roses, actually. And then comes the expression, I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me, who grazes among the roses. This is the verse. And then it continues on, which is also context, but let me just stop on these few verses. Now, if you think about it, this question, where is your beloved gone, is a question that you hear, one of the biggest questions in life, especially in Manhattan today, especially in the Upper West Side. Well, actually everywhere in Manhattan, but the mecca of singles in this country, New York, people ask, where's my beloved? Where is my bashert? This is maybe another way to put it. So yes, J-date and the other J, whatever they're called, all these different dates, have tried to fill this void and advertise, maybe here's where you'll find your beloved. So everybody's seeking, whether you're asking the question, you actually vocalized and verbalized this question, where's my beloved? Or you think about it, this is a question, one of the biggest questions in life. Now if you found your beloved, you'll see even that verse is still relevant. We'll discuss that a little later, hopefully. So where's your beloved? Right there, Shir Hashirim asks the immortal question. And the answer she gives is, my beloved is in the garden, gathering, looking for flowers. And then comes the third verse, which seems most cryptic of all. So what was resolved here? So I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me, grazing among the flowers. Is this a resolution? Is the question answered? Is it not answered? So, but if you think about it for a few moments, you'll see the answer is a very powerful one, a very simple one. When you say, where's my beloved? Clearly it implies the beloved is not there to be seen. So we have to go look for the beloved, for this love. And where's the love? The love is looking for flowers, gathering flowers. So what do the flowers represent here? That's a key question. And as we shall see, by understanding what the beloved is doing, looking for flowers, that's the way to find love. The beloved is looking for flowers simply means this. You ever see a flower? Shoshana is the name of a rose, which is maybe the the quintessential flower. I mean, there are many types of flowers. There are tulips. There are thousands of different types of species. But Shoshana is the one used here. Shoshana means a rose. A rose in the Zohar says that the rose, it's rooted in the spiritual levels. It's called the 13-petaled rose. It has 13 petals, which is the connection to this month actually, because when Moses was up on the mountain, what God revealed to him were the 13 attributes of compassion, which correspond to the 13 petals of the rose. And therefore, I am to my beloved, and my beloved to me. Anil Dodi V'Dodili is the acronym of El. Grazing among the Shoshanim, among the 13 petals, among the 13 attributes of compassion of this month. Because in this month is when God revealed compassion. So we have here so far the operative words are flower. We have flowers, that is, rose, 13, compassion. And obviously seeking. What is the essence of someone looking for love? Any one of us. What does it mean? Why are we looking for love? Why are we not self-contained enough? Why do we need love? So I discussed last week the two theories, among many, a more secular theory and a more Torah type of theory of what love is. Without going into the biological and evolutionary theory that I call the Darwinian Freudian model, that was last week's discussion. The Torah's version, love, as I mentioned before, is searching for transcendence. You sense that there's something greater than your own self-contained self. You're looking to connect to it. That's the essence of love. Let me explain what that means. It may sound simple, but it's not at all simple. When a person, let's say, is not satisfied with the routine, the monotony of our daily lives, and you look for a high, you're looking for some type of spark, some type of novelty, something to shake up your reverie, your monotony. So we do all kinds of things. We travel, music, healthy ways, unhealthy ways, any form of addiction actually, anything that gives you a rush. Why do you need a rush? Why aren't you just not happy with your regular day-to-day life? Because human beings have a natural angst, a natural restlessness that other creatures don't have. For example, I've used this example often. I'm a New York boy. I grew up here. You rarely see any real animals around, besides, of course, pigeons, squirrels, some cats and dogs, and the occasional rodent. Well, not so occasional, more than occasional, and a few other here and there. But rarely do you see anything else in the city here, right? So I remember as a younger man, I was driving up to the upstate, and lo and behold, I see cows grazing, not among roses, just the grass. They're grazing, and I just decided to stop on the road. I was very intrigued by these cows. I mean, they weren't doing anything special. That's what I was intrigued about. And I was watching these cows, and I see, these cows are grazing without nary a worry in the world. And they can be doing this for days on days and years on end. They have no need for excitement. They have no soap operas to go home to watch. They're not looking forward to any baseball or football or basketball games. They have no therapy, no neurosis, unless I'm sure they have a neurotic owner. Probably makes them crazy a little. But on their own, they just do their thing like a clock. Wake up in the morning, take care of their young, breed, feed, born, die, hunt a little, whatever, eat. They don't hunt. And, especially if you've gone through some difficulties in your life, it can be very envious situations. Animal bliss. And there are people who've prayed for animal bliss. I could just have some animal bliss. How long a human being can last with animal bliss is another discussion. But it sounds like a nice aspiration. Humans don't have any of this. These animals do exactly as what they were created. They're exactly the way they were 500 years ago. They don't have any better cell phones or fax machines or offices or buildings. They don't even have them altogether. They live in the same habitats. They're not excited by YouTube, by latest iPhones, All that doesn't matter. We human beings have our whole different world. What's the distinction? Why are we so different? And this is not just cows, for the matter. It's practically any species out there. Whether it's flowers or plants and mineral, or animals, or any species of animal. We humans have something that makes us different. So the way the Torah puts it, and I'll use an analogy for it, Tzemach Tzedek, one of the great Rabbis, he was a little child and was playing on a ladder with other children. They were climbing up on the ladder, and he was the only one that climbed to the top. All the other children were afraid to climb up. So his grandfather, who was watching him, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the great Balatanya, asked him afterwards, he says, why were you the only one that had the courage to climb to the top of the ladder, and all the others were afraid? So he said, simple, Zayd, his grandpa, he said, when the other children, as they were climbing, they kept looking down, so they saw how high they were rather. They were afraid to climb higher. They looked, wow, I'm so high up. When I was climbing, I kept looking up, so I saw how low I was, and it motivated me to climb higher. And if the ladder was higher, I would have gone even further up. Of course, this little boy turned out to be a great, one of the greatest of all. Butzim makat v'yadiyah, the Talmud says, that you can tell from a little child's answers what they may grow up to become. It is the story of what a soul is about. The Torah says, the book of Proverbs says, that the soul of a human being is like is the flame of God. We don't know what a soul looks like, but the most closest approximation is what a flame is. What is a flame? A flame is always flickering. It's restless. It's licking the air. It's the only physical thing that we can see with our eyes that defies gravity. It's only due to the wick that grounds it. So there's two parts to us. There's a part of us that defies gravity. We're restless. We have angst. Animals, as one Hasidic Rabbi said, never saw heaven. They walk on all four. Their head is always facing down. I know whenever I tell the story, people right away say, what about a giraffe? Okay, fine. A giraffe just has a long neck. It's still basically facing down. That's all. It's just, the closest is still on four. Take away the neck, and it's like every other animal. The point is that an animal looks down, and it's not just a physiological, it's because it's psychologically wired differently. It doesn't look up. We human beings, sumar menechem, we raise our eyes to heaven, and we look, who created us? Curiosity. How many billions of dollars have we spent just to satisfy one thing? Curiosity. That came from what? From looking up at the stars. What's out there? Is there a man on the moon? Are there life in outer space? Is there anything like us out there? And we spend and spend, not because many technologies have grown out as incidental benefits from NASA's programs in other countries and so on. But that was not why we did it. We did it because of curiosity. As I said, animals and other species are not interested. They don't even know. For all we know, they're not even aware of what's up there. We have this curiosity. So a healthy measure of angst, of restlessness, is very important for a human being. Where does it become unhealthy? If it's too much angst. Like I mentioned always, that the cardiologist I know, he was once telling me, Rabbi Jacobson, my life is terrible. I wish I just had some peace, animal bliss, calm. So I always say to him, so you mean like a flat line? So he said, no, not like a flat line. In a cardiogram, you don't want a flat line. That's not a good sign. You want a heartbeat that looks like this. You don't want it to look like that. But you want it to have balance, harmony. Not very high peaks and low valleys. You want it to be balanced. Life is movement. But what is a healthy heart or a healthy breath? A contraction, expansion, exhale and inhale. So the human being has a soul, and that soul seeks something greater. That's where love is rooted. That's where love is rooted. That's why we're not satisfied with just being self-contained amoebas, even though there's some people that simulate that quite well as couch potatoes. But the fact is, a healthy human being needs more than themselves. In other words, what the Bible says, that God created a human being, male and female, separated them, and they're looking for their divine other half. They want to connect to something greater than themselves. It's about transcendence. Love equals transcendence. In other words, love is not just a need, a selfish need, which is how many understand it. It's another need. Good, it's not like bread and water and oxygen. It's more sublime, but it's a need. I need it. Therefore, it's driven by the same selfishness. It's not correct. In Judaism, love is driven by transcendence. Purest, healthy love, you look at the healthiest people who love, you'll see it's a completely transcendent thing for them. It's not. It spills over into the rest of their lives. It's not about narcissism. It's integrated. People who don't love healthily, you'll find that their love is very compartmentalized. When they love, and then they're out of it. They have other things to do. Because it's not about transcendence. It's about a desperate need that they're holding on to. Love, in other words, is not sex. Sex is an act. Real sexuality is the expression of love, not that sex replaces love. It's intimacy. I described it last week. I believe that love is a noun, not a verb. Some say women experience love as a noun, men experience it as a verb. But true love is a state of being. When you're in love 24/7. Even when you're not physically making love, or you're not physically the act of love, love is love. Think of a parent and a child. A parent loves a child in a healthy way. Is there a moment that love is not there? Sometimes it's more active, sometimes it's less. The love is there even if you don't see your child. But again, due to unhealthy reasons, we replace love with all kinds of replacements, so to speak, compensation. So to go back to what love is, transcendence. Why is this? But when this verse asks, "Where's your beloved?" Or you can say, "Where's my beloved?" Your beloved is looking for love. That's what they're looking for. You want to know where your beloved is? Your beloved is looking for flowers. Look at a flower. I mentioned before the flower is rooted in the 13-petal rose, the compassion. But look at a flower. What is a flower? Why does it mystify us so much? People send flowers to each other. So, some say that's one big conspiracy by the flower industry. Just like diamonds, they convince us this is romantic. But the truth is, flowers are used as symbols long before there was 800 flowers and long before all the other commercialization of these entities. The classic parable where God asks the angels, should I give music and art and flowers for that matter to the human race? And the angels say no, because they're going to abuse it, they're going to commercialize it, they'll turn it into a business. Which is what happened. So God considered what they said. He says, no, I still will give it to them because I want them to have something to remember me with. Music, art, flowers, all these sublime things are reminders of something more transcendental. You look at a flower, artists that depict flowers. A flower is a mystery. You keep you pick up petals, and there's more. It's a mysterious thing. It's very much reflective of what the human spirit is like. Mysterious, a mystique. What would love be like if there was no mystique? If it was something you can just go to a shelf and buy in the store. So most of us would love that idea. Solved once and for all. Tell me how much it costs, let me go get it. But would that be love? Or you get yourself another commodity? I'm sure someone's going to come up in the next generation or two with some type of, simulated, computerized something, a chip they put into your head, and you think you got love. You can just be living in your fantasy and think it's reality. There's already images like that in some science fiction films. To me, that is ridiculous, as horrendous as if one day somebody figures out how to create a virtual mother. That instead of having a mother cradle and hold a child, you'll have some computer that looks like a mother, and the child thinks this is its mother. We all hope that as a human touch remains with us forever and ever. And I believe that human touch will always be necessary, even as much as they will create simulated and virtual realities. But that's another discussion. So even though it may sound simple, you know what? Let's just create a packaged thing. The mystique of love is what makes it so powerful. And you know who's afraid? Who doesn't like the mystique of love? You know who? The most insecure people. The people who have secure love have no problem with mystique at all because they don't have to control. Why is mystique a problem? If you're really someone that has humility and self-esteem, mystique is one of the most exciting things. There's nothing wrong with me not owning everything. There's nothing wrong with me surrendering. There's nothing wrong with being vulnerable, as I discussed a few weeks ago. Vulnerability is only a fear of those that have fear. You ask people who are truly healthy, they love to be vulnerable. They say, I wish I could find people I could be vulnerable with. The problem is in this world, it can be dangerous and it can be hurtful. But vulnerability is actually a great strength. It's a strength of recognizing there's something more than you, and you don't have it all figured out. Very healthy people have that completely, and you'll see in marriages that really are extremely healthy and last long. Vulnerability, mystique, not understanding it all is all very much part of it. It's all part of the humor and the comedy and challenges of any relationship. A flower captures mystique. A flower is expression. Flowers breed also in an interesting way, right? The flower is through cross-pollination, through pollination. So flowers don't breed as, let's say, male and female. It's bees that carry the pollen and the nectar from one to the other. So a flower is like a symbol of love. A flower is a symbol of mystique, and a flower is a symbol of many layers. So where's your beloved? Your beloved is looking for the inner flowers. And that's where the answer comes. So let's go find his beloved. You want to find the beloved? Look for the flowers. Offer the flowers, and you'll find your beloved. It goes counterintuitive to what most of us would be doing. She said, "Nohalech, where did your beloved go? Or where is your beloved?" She says the answer is looking, gathering flowers. So then the response is, I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me, grazing among the flowers, among the roses. I'll just share a story that I think captures this well. It's actually connected to flowers too. There was this couple that I know where the woman, the wife, she grew up in she was adopted at a young age by her father, and she always had issues with abandonment issues, because even her adopted father also was not always available. So she grew up with this constant fear of the man in her life, being her father, disappearing. She got married, very wonderful guy, they're both wonderful people, but this issue she has. And ultimately, this would come up from time to time. When he would travel on business, she would have these panic attacks, where he would never, he's not coming back, he's betraying her, he's off for someone else. And he would obviously try to compensate and try in any way to preempt this problem. And often, she would go crazy in these moments. So once he calls me that she gave him a call he was somewhere in some city. She called him, and she was so abusive, he said, to the point he's ready to leave this marriage. Because it wasn't the first time, he says. It's completely irrational. He says she thinks I'm her father. She thinks I'm never coming back, and really says things that are extremely hurtful. It's my wife. I'm not her therapist. I'm not her babysitter. I have to treat her, and I can't respect a person like this. Was simply, and he was really distraught. So the advice I gave him was actually very disturbed him even more. But I felt it was the right thing to do, so I suggested it to him. I said to him, "You know what I think you should do? Call up the best flower shop in the city where she lives, your wife. Send her a beautiful bouquet of flowers with a nice note, and that's that." He started yelling at me. He said to me, "Crazy! I want to divorce her now. I'm sending her a bouquet of flowers. It's the exact opposite of what I want to do. She doesn't deserve it." So I said, "Look, we both know that she's not reacting rationally. Some type of knee-jerk reaction back to her own primal sense of abandonment that she has from her childhood. So we know I can't blame her for this. Sometimes to shock her out of the system, what she expects is that you should reciprocate in anger, and this is what always happens, a vicious cycle. So let's break the cycle, do something completely crazy, shock her system up. She won't understand it, because it's not what she would be expecting, and maybe it'll be a little opening." Anyway, I guess he respected me enough to take me up on it, and he did it. Did it resolve all the problems? No, but it definitely shook her up, because she didn't comment on it for a few months. Then one day she brings it up. She says, "You sent me those flowers," which was like, she even knew that she was not behaving. She was yelling at him. She maybe didn't understand the magnitude, but it created an opening, which was what's called in Torah. There's a thing called Mavir al Medesav. Sometimes when you want to change a situation that's very disturbing, you do the exact opposite of what you want to do. What you want to do is reciprocate. And you do the opposite, and you have the strength to do the opposite, it opens up doors at times. So this one thing did help. The reason I'm mentioning it is because it was really about, to go a little more psychological analysis of this episode, this story, is what was she, when she was yelling, what was she yelling? She wasn't yelling at him. She was yelling her pain of being abandoned at a young age. Why did she deserve at 2 years old, at 5 years old, to be forsaken? Why did she deserve that she should not grow up in a home where she can know where her love comes from in a consistent way, like every child deserves? So she was begging for flowers. She was looking for her inner child, for her flowers. She was looking for love. He's the brunt of it because he's her husband. She projects all this onto him. Again, this is not a justification that she can do whatever she likes, and also in any relationship, not everything goes. Because also he's another human being. You can't just say anything you like. But at the root of it, coming from my perspective as an objective perspective, that's what's going on actually. So you have to find a way, a balance, where his dignity is also maintained, while she can find a way to really heal. Now, thank God she has a husband like him, and she knows that because he understands her quite well. Times it was very difficult, and even these things don't go away, but you can either make them a lot worse or they get better, and they've gotten a lot better there. So this is a story. When someone says, "I'm looking, where is your beloved?" All of us are looking for love. The problem is we may be looking in the wrong places. We're looking for the flowers, and the way to connect to that love is not to say, "Hey, what are you doing in the flower shop, or what are you doing in the garden? Come to me. I'm the one that you need to be with." That's not the correct answer. It's not about control. If someone's looking for love, you have to be able to give them love. So that's why the verse Anila David responds to that. Okay, my beloved is looking for flowers. I will join my beloved there in the garden of flowers, and I will initiate. I am to my beloved, and my beloved to me. Where? Grazing among the roses. So, the way to find love is you have to start hanging around where the gardens are, not trying to bring the love where you are, where maybe that's outside of the garden, in your own little selfish place. It means that you have to look at yourself first. Many of us think, okay, my beloved is out there, why don't they come to me? A knight in shining armor. Love is there, essentially from a Jewish perspective. Love and flowers are embedded in each of us all the time. The problem is, where are we? Let's use another analogy. The Zohar says that each of us have a certain melody and music within us. Everyone has their own particular song. However, why don't you hear it? Because it's drowned out by many extracurricular sounds. What happens when the rush hour is loud, a lot of outside noise, a lot of outside static? It doesn't let you hear the subtle song from within. So where are we, and where's our love? The problem is we want love on our terms, so we want it on the static level. But love thrives on the inner level, on the child level, on the flower level, and that's where we need to look for. That's why Elul is taking place in a garden. And you have to go to the garden, not the other way around. We live in a very let's call it materialistic, commodity-oriented world. We've been trained that we have to go out and be aggressive and get things. Love doesn't work that way. You can't get it anywhere. You know how you get it? By shedding layers. Just like by taking off the petals of a flower. By undressing. You get it by freeing yourself of all the distractions. And then something emerges. That's where love comes from. Exactly like a flower. So there's a flower within each of us, and that's where love dwells, real love dwells. The question is, are you going to go there, or are you going to try to force it to come to you in your location? Now, the most comfortable thing is for us to just be, I want to stay here, and I want it to come to me. It's not what you really want, because then it's coming to you not on its terms. It's coming not as love, it's going to come on your terms, which is whatever is going on in your outer level, not on your inner level. And what you want to be able to experience is something that's inner. Which is why the critical way to prepare for any type of really loving experience, or for that matter, Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, is to become more spiritual. If you're not more soulful, you're not going to find soulful things. I know this again sounds overly simplistic, like we said before, nothing changes. You can't find soulfulness if you don't become more soulful. How is it going to happen exactly? You're looking to hear this subtle music, but you're so surrounded by so much noise and sound, and you suddenly say, why can't I hear the music? So someone say, what do you want me to do? You say, turn the music up. Oh, you don't want subtle music. You want the music to sound loud so it should drown out now the loud sounds you have. That's what you really want. Then you're going to get that. You're not going to get the real love. You're going to get the love as it fits to your terms, which is loudness. Subtlety can only be accessed through subtle tools. That's how it is. If you want to maintain and not compromise any of your so-called comfort zones, then you're going to get things based on your comfort zones. You're not going to get them based on what their truth is really like. In teaching, in classes, in teaching ideas. So sometimes ideas need to be developed. First you get it on a superficial level. Then you understand it deeper. Now if you have a very brilliant mind comes and says, don't give me all the introductions, tell me the bottom line, the punchline. Why can't a teacher just do that? Very simple. Why? Because you're not ready to hear it. You're not yet, you haven't developed subtle enough tools to understand the subtlety of the message. So first you need to hear the metaphors and more metaphors and introductions. Not because the teacher is being cruel or ungiving. It's because simply you need to have tools. If you don't have subtle tools, you can't appreciate subtlety. But we want love on our terms. And our terms are very crass and very non-subtle. And that's why a big part of love is never achieved. We define what love is, and then we say we want that, and then we say I don't get it because it's not. And someone say, one second, who defined it? You made the definition, and now you're not getting what you defined. Maybe your definition is wrong. Nobody wants to hear that. No? I deal with this so often. People say they want something, okay, and then they say I can't get it. So what do you want from me? I want me to help you get it. So I said, well, what happens if I disagree with what you're asking for? No, they're absolutely adamant that's what they need. Okay, so then what are you coming to me for? You decided what you need, now you want me to help you get something you need that I don't think you need. Or I think you need a different version of it. Which really means they're not really coming for help, they're coming someone to agree with them. Which I don't always say so bluntly here, I'm speaking here in general terms. But this is often what happens. I know it sounds almost ridiculous, but this is what people do all the time. They tell you a problem. And they want a solution, but they want a solution to to the problem the way they framed it. And if you tell them, well, if you did something different, you wouldn't have the problem in the first place. Nobody wants to hear that. Einstein said, I believe, that you can't, that a solution to a problem cannot come from the same place that the problem came from. Now, if you are the cause of the problem, so how are you exactly going to solve it? You are the problem. You're your own worst enemy, and you want a solution. And then when you come to an objective party and ask for a solution, and they suggest something fresh and new, no, you want this problem solved by the way, on your terms, when you are the cause of the problem. You get the problem here. How would you resolve such a thing? So this is a very difficult thing to do because you want to resolve it by really helping somebody. You don't want to insult them. You don't want to alienate them. You want to empower them. So you have to find very wise diplomatic ways to mask certain thoughts, but sometimes you have to say it bluntly. Being that I'm speaking now without any names, without any, in general terms, I can afford to say this in a very broad way. Personally, I would obviously be far more sensitive. So I'm saying this to whoever needs to hear it. Someone once came to the Tzemach Tzedek who was speaking very harshly about a certain situation, and afterwards he said to the Tzemach Tzedek, why did you speak about me in public? He says, I didn't mention any names. How do you know it was you? He says, because what you described is exactly my personality, So he said, look, I'm like a hat maker. I make hats of different shapes and sizes. I hang them up on the hooks. And then people come in and fit them on their heads. And if it fits, that's the one I meant. So you're the one that basically determined paskin that means you. Fine, that's you. So that's the general terms. Another little trick of the trade, there's another story with the son, Rabbi Marash. Someone came to him and said to the Rabbi, there's a friend of mine that did something really terrible, but he's ashamed to come to you. So he sent me to ask for what should he do about it. So the Rabbi said, why did he have to expose himself to you? He could have come to me and said, I have a friend, which means one of the ways to sometimes go for advice, and you're ashamed. You just say, I have a friend that this and this happened to. I'm sure some of us have tried that method. It's kol hamispal ba'at chaverei, meaning if anyone who prays for another in need, you will be answered initially. So some people say that's what it means, that you're speaking really about yourself, but you're praying, so to speak, for someone else. Anyway, that's an aside. So here we have a month of Elul, which is when we graze where the flowers are. You want to find love, you have to go on love's terms, not in your terms. That's the bottom line. So where's my beloved? Where's your beloved? Your beloved is hanging around where the flowers are. So one response would be, hey, let's schlep the guy out of the garden. Let's bring him to my turf. Or maybe a better way and a healthier way is ani l'deidi v'deidi li. I am to my beloved. I'm not waiting for my beloved to come to me. I will go to my beloved, and then my beloved to me, grazing among the flowers. That's where love is. Love is not about control, who's going to win, on whose turf and whose terms. It's about going to a deeper place, going to a place that takes you on a journey beyond yourself. There's enough commodities in this life that belong to you. We buy cars, and we buy furniture, and we buy homes, and we buy boats, and we have all kinds of possessions. Fine, material possessions, that's how it works. Some things in life go the other way around. You are owned by them, not you own them. Love is one of those things. Truth is one of those things. The soul, God, things that are better not to own. They don't have to be owned. On the contrary, if you own it, you don't really have it. You want them to encompass you, to engulf you, rather than you engulfing them. You ever shut out the world and you go underwater? Or you put on a headset to listen to music. Who's controlling whom? You're submerging in the water. You're submerging in the music. You don't want to control the music. Then it will defeat the whole purpose. You want to be lifted on its wings to another place, to be transported to another place. That's the true nature of love. It's wings. Or flowers. Flowers and wings look alike sometimes, by the way. Some say flowers are wings on earth, basically. It's a sublime entity that helps you grow and climb to places that you can't reach on your own. That's what true love is. So really, what our opportunity in a month like this is to revisit and reclaim what love really means. You look at children, go back to children, innocent children, you see what a flower looks like. Children are flowers. They elicit the same feeling, by the way. Think about it. They're pure, untouched, very sensitive, delicate. Right? They're full of mystery, intrigue, and they're alive. They're constantly alive. They just embrace. And you'll see, when you look at that, you want children to become adults too quickly. So once upon a time in secular child psychology, they said children are just adults in the making. Today we understand it quite differently. If I had to choose, I would choose the world of children than the world of adults. A child is the purest version of you and I. So why would we want to turn the children into us? Now, of course, it's inevitable. We grow older, and adulthood brings maturity, seasoning, experience, wisdom, if you wish. But purity, innocence, truth, lack of self-consciousness, that's what children have. The greatest gift is to be the biggest adult and retain the sparkle and the enchantment of a child. That would be the biggest blessing, I would say, to any person. When parents meet me and they say, give a blessing to my children, I always say, I give a blessing to you not to corrupt these children. You should learn from them more than they learn from you. Some people are mortified by that. What do you mean? We're the adults, we should be teaching. Yeah, you teach them the facts. You teach them not to cross the street on their own. You teach them right and wrong. You teach them morale. You teach them etiquette. And obviously the ways of the world, how to be a mensch in this world, how to protect yourself. But you don't have to teach them truth. Anyone that's teaching truth is like what reminds me, any fascist regime that establishes, the first thing they establish is a Bureau of Truth and Information. Why do you need a Bureau of Truth and Information? Because you want to control minds. So truth, purity, soul, I trust children far more than any adult. I'm sure you agree with me. That's where you'll hear real music. Because children don't have all the the subjectivity and the jadedness and all the machinations and the complexity, let's call it the duplicity, maybe is the best word, of adulthood. So we really want the best of both worlds, obviously. So in this month of Elul, I want to wish everybody that it's an opportunity, as I said, first of all, to look at yourself and find the flower within you. Learn to love yourself in a new way. Learn that you don't have, security does not mean that you're always right, that you have to be the loudest, you have to always be in control. Loving yourself in a healthy way means knowing that you are a gift, that you are God's gift to this world, that you were chosen like a flower from a garden in heaven and sent to this earth and with an indispensable mission. That is the ultimate self-love. Because you notice it has a combination of real value and worth, but also real humility, because it's not yours. You're a gift. God chose you and put you. You're on a mission. You're an ambassador from a higher place. So that gives you both indispensable value, but also profound humility. That is where the true self-love should come from. And it resonates when you think about it. Children have this naturally. It's only the adults in our lives that begin to play around with our wires, that make us start rethinking what we have value, don't have value. When parents don't nurture, don't respect, or don't validate their children start doubting themselves. Am I really valuable? Am I really? When children are nurtured, it just reinforces this feeling that I am a gift. I was sent here. And again, I don't mean a gift, a sense of entitlement and the arrogance that comes with that. That's not what I'm talking about now. I'm not talking about what insecure parents infuse in children, this sense of entitlement, you're better than everyone else. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you are special, and you know that everyone else on earth is also an indispensable gift, just as much as you are. It goes together. That's where self-love is originated. You are fundamentally a flower at heart. An angel, in Michelangelo's words. When he said, how do you carve those angels? I saw the angels trapped in the marble. I carved and set them free. So you're a flower, essentially, a musical note. There's all similar analogies. And then the flower, the angel, the note, the music gets covered up in all kinds of layers. The rest of life is either you're going to change your perspective and say there's no flower in there, it's only the concrete, and I want to bring everything on my terms, or you realize that the outer layers need to be chipped away and allow the flower to emerge again. That's what a month of Elul is, and that's what Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. It's rediscovering yourself in a new way, re-looking at yourself, and having the courage to challenge your viewpoint of yourself. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe the healthiest thing we could always do. That's how we renew ourselves. And who does not want to have new possibilities, new opportunities, and so on? So may God bless everybody here and all of us to be able to really utilize this month in a true Anila Deidi V'Deidili. You initiate Anila Deidi. Don't wait for the beloved to come to you. They're hanging around where the flowers are. Go where the flowers are. That's what you should be doing. And you'll discover interesting things. So, with that said, I'd like to wish everybody, we're going to be having a few more classes obviously before Rosh Hashanah and then continue on. But we really wish each other a very blessed year. And obviously you're all welcome to come. I'm going to continue this series in the coming weeks, developing similar themes. But it's all about, as I said, rediscovering after a break. After something was lost, after hopelessness, after despair, finding renewed hope. So thank you very much. It's been an honor to share a few words with fellow flowers. I don't know how that sounds. Wallflowers. Roses. If you have not seen the book 60 Days, we have it here. Pick it, raise it up, Phil. The 60 Days. We also send out a daily reminder email. If you'd like to get it, please let us know. Philip will be giving a class tomorrow evening. It has additions to it, yes. Yeah. The second one has additions, yeah. And I will be here next Wednesday as we continue this journey. Again, great honor and pleasure. Thank you so much.